video during the coronavirus quarantine of 2020. So that means we're stuck here at home with like 8 children. Well, maybe 7. So sanity is running thin. Anyway, got lots of time for videos now, right? So this one is about corn allergy. This afflicts a lot of you out there. Some of you who know you have corn allergy, and many of you who don't know you have corn allergy. You just think you have a whole bunch of perhaps different problems that are miserable, and you don't even realize it's due to corn allergy. And that's because corn is incredibly pervasive in the modern world, which is why corn allergy is the absolute hands down worst allergy to have. It's very hard to avoid. You have to modify your life in an extreme way to try to avoid it. And most people don't know how to do that or don't want to go through the effort. Anyway, it's miserable. I know there's quite a following on the internet of corn allergic people, Facebook groups and other internet groups out there. Many of our patients, well, not many of our patients, but we have a lot of patients that are corn allergic who participate in those groups too. So I know you're out there. The LDI is perhaps the best, most effective way and safest way to deal with this problem, it turns out. So that's why I'm bringing this out as a specific topic today. It's not a very general thing, it's very specific. But it affects a growing number of people. Some of you whose lives are totally devastated by this problem. Anyway, if you're allergic to corn, just mildly, you might notice something like, hey, when I eat corn, it really upsets my stomach, I get nauseous. So I try to minimize it. And as long as you don't eat, a bowl of popcorn or a whole ear of corn or, tortilla chips, a plate of nachos or something, you're okay because it takes a lot of exposure to bother you. And you don't find that you have to avoid corn derivatives or foods that were made from corn substances, chemicals from corn substances, animals that ate corn at some time in their life. And then there are those of you who are corn allergic to a very, very extreme point of sensitivity, and you do have to avoid all those things. You find that you cannot take any kind of supplements because they all have at least one ingredient that was at some point in its history corn derived. You can't eat any kind of processed food. You can't eat at any kind of restaurant. You can't have regular beef or regular dairy, but you can have grass-fed beef maybe or grass-fed dairy. If you've noticed that distinction, and it's really puzzling, the difference is corn allergy. Why that happens with corn and it doesn't necessarily happen with other things is because corn, the plant, corn is a grass. It's a very tall, thick grass. If you saw native ancestral corn, it was these little scraggly, hard ears of corn that were usually blue or mixed colors and whatnot, and it was really hard to eat. But over millennia of human cultivation and breeding and agricultural transformation, we get these huge, big stalks of corn with big fat ears and juicy kernels and all that we enjoy today. But it's a grass, okay? And it's unique in the plant world and the world of biology in that it changes the valence of the carbon atom. And if you don't know what that means, that's okay. Just know that every living thing on Earth is carbon-based. When we meet aliens, maybe they'll be based on some other kind of mineral or metal or element primarily, but we're not. So we're organic, which means we are carbon-based life forms. We take in carbohydrates or fats that are carbon and water, put together, and we exhale carbon dioxide, and we make proteins, and we store sugars, all of which are carbon-based molecules. So anyway, corn changes the carbon atom in such a way that it leaves a signature. It leaves like an energetic, vibrational essence sort of signature on everything that it passes through post-consumption. So if you drink milk, and that cow that the milk came from had been fed corn at some point in his life, part of that cow is made from corn. There's a book that describes this. It's also a very good book in general by Michael Pollan called The Omnivore's Dilemma. If you haven't read it, it talks about corn in this way and how you could grind up a cow and find out what percentage of it was actually derived from corn originally. It leaves a stamp, okay? And that's why corn behaves differently this way from any other kind of food, really. Like pregnant women will find that their baby has a negative reaction if they themselves consume beef or dairy that had been corn fed. But if they have grass-fed corn or grass-fed, dairy products, their baby doesn't react. So that's like 3 steps in the food chain through a couple of different animal species to the baby and to make the baby react. It's crazy, right? And if you go telling other doctors this or allergists or whatever, they will think you're crazy. And many of you probably have had that experience. And I'm sorry that my colleagues are narrow-minded assholes to a great extent. Anyway, so this is a real problem, right? And if you think about it, we've been using corn as such a major component and building block of our entire world and society for so long now. Manufacturing all kinds of sweet, corn syrup gets put into all other kinds of foods, right? We have all sorts of chemical substances that are ultimately made from corn, or some part of it's from corn, and people will react to those. I've had kids who can't go to public school, not my kids, patient kids who can't go to public school because if they touch the surface of the desk at school, they get hives because it's coated with a varnish that was corn derived. It's bad. People who can't go to movie theaters because as soon as they set foot in the lobby, the smell of popcorn from 20 feet away starts to make their eyes swell up or gives them an asthma attack. So it can be extremely bad, and those people end up having a smaller and smaller world to try to live in. And then they're desperate for help, and nobody seems to have anything to offer you, but this works. The LDI works for this very well, actually. I've had a number of people who their story is that I react to everything. I'm allergic to every food that I eat. I'm allergic to like everything in the environment, all these chemicals and everything. Most of those people are allergic to corn. Maybe not most, but a lot of you who have that story, what you're actually allergic to is corn. Like maybe this one thing. And they don't necessarily always realize it because they seem to react the same way to everything. So that's one of the key points in your history as you think about what I'm saying and your own illness pattern or somebody you care about. If all these different foods seem to elicit the same set of symptoms, maybe to varying degrees because there's a variable amount of actual corn exposure. Like if you eat corn itself, you react at this kind of level, and if you eat something that has corn starch in it, maybe it's down here, and if you eat something with a chemical additive that was made from corn, your reaction level is down here. But it's all the same symptoms, right? They all give you abdominal cramps and diarrhea, or they all give you mouth itching, or they all give your child absolute crazy behavior change, right? Those of you who have any, what I affectionately refer to as children of the corn, right, out there, based on the Stephen King book, may notice that your child goes bonkers if they have anything with corn in it. That's a pretty common reaction. On top of perhaps a rash or facial flushing or vomiting or just crazy irritability, stimming behaviors if they're autistic, spectrum, all sorts of gastrointestinal problems. Maybe they just become really lethargic, whatever. It can do anything to you you can imagine. And that's just because the immune system is involved. So corn allergy, the symptoms you get can look like a very different condition in different people that get it, which is true of any food allergy. That's not unique to corn, right? Once the immune system is involved, this trigger over here, even though maybe all these different types of triggers can all cause all these different types of symptoms. That's a spider web of chaos and possibilities. So people who have very narrow views of allergy and what that looks like allergists, who are some of the least helpful people on the planet, unfortunately, might tell you something like, oh, well, if you don't get hives or if you don't get mouth swelling, you're not allergic to it. Okay, so a migraine headache or disabling arthritis pain that might happen or bloody diarrhea or a skin rash that starts just cracking open spontaneously, none of those things matter to the allergist, right? Because you didn't get an itchy mouth. Awesome. But you can get anything, pretty much. So back to my point I was trying to make. If somebody notices that they eat 100 totally different, seemingly different types of foods and they all cause the same set of symptoms, then you're not actually allergic to every one of those foods on their own merits. Because just statistically speaking, the odds of you having the same symptom reaction to that many different foods approaches 0. Okay? So it's much more likely that you are reacting to one thing that is common throughout all those different foods, which if it's a food still, it's corn. Corn's going to do that. Or you could actually be sensitive to yeast in your gut, or you could be sensitive to parasites that live in your gut, or some other organism, some kind of bacterium or whatever. You could have constant gut inflammation due to an internalized inflammatory response to some organism within your GI flora. And because that causes a constant state of immune agitation in the gut and a constant state of inflammation in the gut, every time you put anything into your digestive tract, you'll have this reaction pattern occur. And it'll cascade with the same kind of symptom progression as everything else. We'd be like, those people will say, even if I drink water, like if I have a big gulp of water, it'll elicit a reaction. So those people may not be reacting to corn, although they still might, because water has a bunch of chemicals in it. Generally, like almost, it doesn't matter what kind of water you drink, for the most part, tap water from almost any city, most bottled waters, you're going to get corn residues, and some people will have a reaction to water because of the corn-derived substances in it. If you can drink Crystal Geyser water, okay, one particular brand, there might be others, but this is one that I know of. If you can tolerate Crystal Geyser water, which is bottled water, but it's the only one that some of my corn allergic people have pointed this out to me. It's the only one that they can tolerate because it's not made from any recycled plastics, and the recycling process of the plastic bottles introduces a ton of corn-derived substances. So it's not even necessarily in the water, it might be in the bottle. So try that. If you can have Crystal Geyser water and you're like, oh, I can actually drink this water without reacting, then you're probably corn allergic. Anyway, kind of rambled about what corn allergy might look like. It just becomes an all-encompassing thing for some of you. You react to this and that and everything, and so just think about whether or not the comment's read as corn. One thing you can do is try eating some straight-up corn and see if you react to that the same as everything else, but maybe worse. Maybe it's more intense in terms of the symptoms. You go, okay, yeah, this is like all my other reactions, but this is the worst for sure. That might be a clue. If you find out that you're allergic to corn, or if you contact us for help with your problems in general, and I tell you, you sound like you're allergic to corn, or your child sounds like they're allergic to corn, you may have other food allergies as well. And of course, corn is included in our whole food mixture we use with LDI. But what I find with the corn crowd, in terms of LDI specifically, is that reaction, that allergy, often requires a dilution factor, so like a dose dilution, that is far different from all of your other foods. And it's pretty unique in this regard. The difference between your corn LDI dose and your other food LDI doses can be ridiculous, can be more than 1 trillion to 1. Actually, it can be quite a bit broader than that, probably 1 quintillion to 1. Like I've had to give people the corn dilution out into the 15 to 18C territory for some of you that are highly sensitive, whereas all their other food reactions are like 6 or 7C, right? So that could be as much as a 20-0 dilution difference. It's ridiculous. And because of that, when I used to use LDA, so those of you who are familiar with like where LDI kind of roots evolved from, LDA, which is the pharmacy-derived food mixtures, those food mixtures never worked for those people with pretty severe corn allergy. They just will not. And there's 2 reasons why. One is that the dilution is just not far enough out. But what I did was I did take the LDA mixtures and I diluted them further on my own with just water, and I could find a dose that might correct the corn reaction for some of you. But then the whole mixture was at that dilution, and it therefore wouldn't help with any of your other food allergies, just not at all. So that was a problem. But the other issue is that all of the initial antigens that were used to make the LDA dilutions had glycerin in them. They buy them all from factories, and so they're in 50% glycerin solution, and you'll react. You just react to everything as if it were corn, even though it's like a carrot mixture or a potato antigen or whatever that they bought. You'll react to it as if it were corn because it has a glycerin base. On that note, if you ever got skin tested at an allergist's office, the antigens that they prick you with also have glycerin in them. Usually. I think there are some rare exceptions, but by and large, they're going to be glycerin-based antigens. So if you had an experience like this, where you went to an allergist's office, and they did like skin prick testing with a whole bunch of different antigens, and you literally reacted to everything. Like when people tell me I reacted to everything they tested me with, that person is almost always allergic to corn. Because again, statistically, what are the odds that you reacted to 50 different antigens that they pricked you on your skin with, which are usually airborne antigens when they do that kind of skin testing, you know, trees and weeds and grasses and mold and dust and all that stuff. And they'd be like, I reacted to everything. And then I say, well, can you tell that you react to certain animals? Can you tell that you react to mold? You go, no, I can't tell that I'm allergic to any of these airborne things. Well, then you're just allergic to corn. And the allergist, whose job it is to understand this crap, right, doesn't have a clue. That they just say, oh my God, you're allergic to everything. And they might even make allergy shots for you that don't do squat because the problem is you're actually allergic to corn. And they don't even think about what they're pricking you with. Anyway, so that's a problem with other forms of immunotherapy that use factory-produced antigens that start out with a glycerin base. That's a problem if you're corn allergic. So our food mixture, I took actual foods, you know, leaves from lettuce and kale and actual pieces of carrot and pineapple and chunks of different fish and meats and nuts and everything, and I just blended them up in plain water in a Vitamixer and then sterilized and filtered them, and I made my own extracts from actual food. There's no glycerin, there's no corn contamination, and I tried to get organic, you know, products as much as possible to avoid the chemical introduction and whatnot. Those of you who are super corn allergic know how difficult it is to truly find foods that don't have a corn residue. But what I can say is that the ones we started with were as low as you could possibly get, and it seems to work fine. So we have corn by itself, and for those of you who are severely corn allergic, what we do is typically we use corn first, and that way we can get your biggest problem under control, find the dose that works for that, and we don't get confused by all the other food reactions you may or may not have. You can focus on testing with corn that you know is just a corn exposure. And when we get that dose right, it will reveal what are other actual food reactions that you might have. Because a lot of you do. A lot of you do have a reaction specifically to dairy, or a reaction specifically to potatoes, or tomatoes, or rabbits, or whatever. You know, eating rabbit, not petting a rabbit. So you'll be able to tell. Once we get the corn, like, smoke cloud out of the way, you can tell, oh, now I can tell when I have dairy, I just get really congested. And I'm like, cool, then we can fix that. So we have a food minus corn. Like, I have our food mixture, but I also took the time to make a foods deleting corn, so that those of you who are just corn allergic, it's a lot simpler for us. We can find the corn dose and then give you the other mixture that has all the other foods and find where you react to those separately. And it works quite well. It's very elegant. It freaks people out to go through the process because some of them have really severe reactions, and they don't want to do test exposures to try to see if each LDI dose actually works. So what I encourage people to do, and if you watch this, do it before you ever contact us, so you already know this at the time of our discussion, is to do skin testing with corn and see if you have a visible reaction, because then you can use that as our guide after every LDI dose to see if the corn LDI dose worked or not. Like if you take some cornstarch and water and just put a little paste on your forearm or the back at the top of your foot, someplace away from your mouth, right? And you have a redness and an itching or a hive reaction even show up, then that's great. That's your baseline reaction, and we can use that as our guide rather than having to eat something with corn in it and risk the full Monty of like reactivity that you get. So other things you can do is airborne reaction. A lot of our severely corn allergic people, like I mentioned, can't go to a movie theater, or if somebody pops microwave popcorn in the room that they're in, they'll start having a reaction, they can't be around it. Or they can open a bag of tortilla chips and like from arm's length and go, oh yeah, my eyes are burning, I'm starting to feel dizzy, whatever, use some exposure like that as your initial test. And funny, one of our recent patients who's an adult in her 40s who has corn reactivity, to the point where she couldn't go to movie theaters, she'd get these reactions. She took her most recent dose, and I think she's reacting around corn somewhere in the 12 to 15 C range, which is where a lot of you react. And by comparison, most of you, if you react to corn in the 12 to 15 C range, your other foods are still likely to be like 6 C or something, just crazy different. Anyway, after one of her recent doses, she did the popcorn test, and she's like, I didn't have any reaction. I even put my nose right in the bag and nothing happened to me at all. And so then what I told her is, well, now then you have to try to eat some. Because the goal of this is I can eat corn and nothing happens at all. And that may sound unrealistic, but that is actually what happens. That's what happens with this. We can eliminate your corn reaction, believe it or not. So she said, like I said, you're gonna have to eat some now. Just chew up a few kernels of popcorn and then spit them out. See if anything happens, and then if nothing happens in 20 minutes or whatever, based on your reaction history, right? You have to know how you usually react for this to make sense. Based on that, then you can eat, chew up one or two kernels and swallow it, and then kind of wait and see if anything happens. Just put your toe in the water, then your foot, then your ankle. Ease into it with your exposure. And so I told her that's what you'll have to do, so we can see if in fact this is the right dose. Because if it is the ideal dilution, you will be able to eat a bowl full of corn and nothing happens to you. So she emails me back in a few days, and it says, OMG, I ate the shit out of that corn. I ate the shit out of that popcorn. So she ate the whole entire bag and had no reaction whatsoever. And it's so funny to me. It always blows people's mind when that works that well. And then I always think, well, isn't that why you called, right? Isn't that the whole point? Isn't that why we're doing this? And I appreciate, though, that when folks have had this problem or other problems that we are able to help them with, over years of time, and they're so debilitating, to think that it might ever go away seems like an absolute fairy tale fantasy. But it's not. This technique works extremely well for this particular problem. We have eliminated just life-threatening severe corn or other food allergies for hundreds of people, and it continues. So keep it in mind. It's not like the simplest process. If this is the only video you've seen of me so far, watch the other videos we have about LDI in general and the process, and talk to people who have done it so that you understand. But if we're focusing on corn and we know how you react to corn, this is a very fairly simplistic logistically process to go through. It's very mechanical. Take a dose, do your corn test. If it doesn't change, take another dose, do your corn test, and we eventually find a dose that eliminates your corn reaction. And then we can go from there. If you have other foods that you react to, we can use the food minus corn to eliminate those as well. We make fine adjustments to the dose until you can tolerate corn for longer and longer stretches. It's life-saving. It's life-changing to be able to do this. And it's true for any food sensitivity. We should be able to improve it. I can say with pretty good confidence that this works more than 90% of the time for food allergies in general, and other kinds of allergies and all other sorts of things. But I think that's what I have for corn specifically, except I guess one other comment is babies, infants. We get a lot of parents who have infants that are corn allergic who find out because the kid can't tolerate any kind of formula. They finally discover a particular formula that is lowest in corn. I think some very knowledgeable parents I just spoke to this week mentioned that the pre-mixed alimentum formula, so not the powder that then you mix at home, which has corn syrup solids in it, right? But the pre-mixed version doesn't actually have corn syrup in it. You just make it differently. So if your child can actually drink like the pre-mixed liquid bottles of alimentum, but they react to powdered alimentum, the difference is corn, and that's one thing you can do. So they just find that their kid can't tolerate any formula at all. They're failing to grow. They spit up all the time. Their butt's on fire constantly. That kid's often corn allergic, just so you know. People don't always know that. The parents just know that they have food problems and all these issues, and they're telling me the story, and I'm hearing these same common elements I hear from parents all the time, and I'm just like, okay, your kid's allergic to corn. And then we often start with the corn LDI by itself first and see, you see if that fixes everything or if there's other problems aside from that, and then you can tell. And then we just fix those too. So, all right, I'll leave it at that. This is the end of March 2020. So those of you who are also stuck at home on coronavirus quarantine, hang in there. Stock up on